Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I'm excited to get started with today's training again around how 8A companies can find agencies that love you. And really, the tips that I'm going to share are going to be helpful for any other business. For example, how do you find agencies that love women-owned small businesses, etc. But before we get started, I like to start with a tip of the day as a way to say thank you to those showing up early and on time. I really appreciate seeing people into the chat already and talking and engaging in one way or another. So thank you for doing that. My tip for you today is to get to know your district office of the Small Business Administration. I feel like a lot of small businesses in the federal government space, we just don't understand the value or even aware that they exist, that you have a district office near you, wherever you are, whatever state you're in. There's a Small Business Administration district office, and inside there are a bunch of professionals who work for SBA who are dedicated to the success of small businesses in America. And so you want to reach out, find out what events they host and attend. I've done training in the past for the SBA. A few months ago, I did a training for SBA in the St. Louis area. And, these folks are really committed to the success of small businesses in general across America. And they have events where you can meet them, and you can also just pick up the phone and call them. We've got some of their information in our small business directory, but really the best place to go to get a up-to-date directory is the SBA.gov site. Just go there, type in district office, and you'll find a whole PDF with everybody's phone name, email, and what they do. For example, somebody is specializing in the HUBZone companies in their area, somebody specializing in women-owned small businesses for their district. So just reach out and call them. And when you do, you'll begin to be working with somebody who not only can maybe give you some advice, answer some questions, but perhaps they know agency personnel that you're trying to get in and talk to. That's my tip for those of you showing up early and on time. And again, thank you very much for doing that. I'm going to get together. Oh, by the way, really quick thing, just as an aside, because I'm having a conversation later today. I got reached by DOD, and they have $1 billion SATOC. So it's basically a single award task order contract, $1 billion vehicle that's going to be an 8A set aside. If that's in your space at all, SATOCs, and it's so complicated. It's not IT for sure, but there's so much in $1 billion thing. Reach out and let me know, because it's a recompete, so it's guaranteed that it's going to happen. And it's going to be an 8A set aside. And they've asked me to basically reach out to 8As. This is not my formal way of doing it, but as long as you're here, let's engage. Okay, so let me turn off my chat. Let me get to the training, because I got a lot for you today. And today I'm going to share my entire screen. Hopefully nothing embarrassing happens. Okay, let's dive into how to find federal agencies that love 8A small businesses. This is really important to me because we're in the end of the year, right? We're in the last 2 months of the fiscal year 2023, and I'm going to talk to you about some 2022 data, which is the last fiscal year, and it's really important that you see that. But these last 2 months, just a huge ramp up in activity and dollars that are going to 8A small businesses. In 2022, August, the second to last month of the fiscal year, $900 million went to 8A small businesses as direct awards. September, look at the numbers here. If you're looking at my screen, right? $2.6 billion went direct award to 8A small businesses across the country. There are not that many 8A small businesses. That's huge, right? And so we're going to be talking about that because they're going to be doing some level of spending that's similar. I just did a post today talking about how the government doesn't spend trillions as it relates to us small business, but billions is still a pretty good number. So in today's training, I'm going to talk about how do you know, or what says an agency loves 8A small businesses. Why is it important to work with these agencies, to really know who they are and then work with them? And then finally, I want to wrap up with showing you actually how you can go find the agencies that love 8As. Or if you're not an 8A, right, how can you find agencies that love what your business is, whether it's small business or SDVO, woman-owned, HUBZone, et cetera. That's what we're going to dive into today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. Sorry, I almost told you a joke. Like, if you don't know who I am, well, I don't know either. I'm just in a good mood today, folks. Just really good mood. All right. So if you don't know who I am, though, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I'm excited to have you here with our federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. Since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's a process. It's a process I learned for 20 years when I was a small business owner, and it's a process I want to teach you. You can see here that I laid out the 7-step process for federal revenue success. If you haven't watched my training on that, go watch it. This is the fundamental path to success in the federal market. A lot of you have already done this. Thank you. But if you haven't, put your company name into the chat with your core competency, 2 or 3 words that just let us know who you are. This is really important because I'm doing the training, but this is not just training. This is a networking, a daily networking activity for you where you can interact with people. If all you do is find one new person every single day you come to my training, that's 260 new connections, good connections, right, in a year. Imagine if you're engaging with 5 or 10 others on here. We often have between 50 or 100 people live on the trainings. And so let folks know who you are. Let them know that you're open to connecting. And by the way, don't wait for them to reach out to you to connect. Reach out to them and connect. So what says an agency loves 8A small businesses? I say that agencies love 8A small businesses when they put their money where their mouth is, kind of thing. I don't need them to just say they like us. They like minority-owned businesses. They really are championing that. Hey, let's make sure minority small businesses get a good percentage. That's cool. That's talk. That's just a goal. What I want to see is action. Which agencies are actually putting their money, right, where their mouth is and where their heart is. And so it's really important for you to remember agencies that have awarded contracts to 8A small businesses. That doesn't necessarily mean that they love 8A small businesses. That could just mean that the 8A small businesses are really good at going in and winning a contract. And because they happen to be an 8A small business, the agency is getting credit for awarding contract dollars to an 8A small business. But it could have been that 8A small business just kind of barreled their way in, even on full and open opportunities. That's not saying that the agency loves the 8As. What says that agencies love 8As, in my opinion, is the amount of sole source and direct awards they do. Frankly, right? If you look in there and you can see agencies are sole sourcing contracts to 8A small businesses, they didn't accidentally award a contract to an 8A small business. They absolutely awarded a contract to small businesses or 8A small businesses. One thing about my numbers, by the way, I'm only talking about sole source. You can actually even expand this, and we might do this today when I go in and live demo how I find this information out. But I'm just doing direct awards, but we could also sit there and find ones that say set aside competitive because that's still saying I love 8A small businesses as an agency if I'm making a determination to specifically work with 8A small businesses. One of the things that I try to teach people in the trainings that I do is go where you're not needed. And in sales leadership, what this means is if I have 5 or 10 salespeople, I want to support and work with the salespeople actually don't even need my help. Because if I do, they'll do so much more. But if I've got people who are struggling on how to put pen to paper or pick up the phone, that's not where I need to be. That's remedial training. At certain levels, you want to go where you're not needed. And in this case, what I really want you to think about is this mistake we make sometimes in the industry is that we look at agencies and we say, oh, they're not hitting their 8A number or their HUBZone number or whatever. Let me go in there because they probably want to. If they wanted to hit their 8A number or their HUBZone number, they would be hitting their 8A and HUBZone number. It is not hard. And so I tell you, stay away from agencies that aren't hitting their goals. Find the ones that are, because those are the ones that love you. Those are the ones that are committed to working with 8A small businesses or with HUBZone, woman-owned, et cetera. So I put this bell curve in here, and I really wanted you to pay attention to it as it related to, thinking about working with the firms or the agencies that love 8As. This bell curve, and I go into it in a whole nother training, but what I really want you to pay attention to is on the left-hand side, it says innovators, early adopters, early majorities. This is 50% of the bell curve on that left side. Those people, those agencies will work with you. The early majorities wait until the innovators and early adopters are working with you, right? Past performance, things like that, but they will work with you. Go to the other side. This is what I was just talking about. If they wanted to hit their numbers, they would. On the other side, the late majority and the laggards, 50% of the agencies, of the buyers, et cetera, they're just not going to work with you. And as long as you keep trying to knock on the door of the late majority and laggards, you're not able to knock on the door of early adopters and innovators. You're not able to have conversations with the people who are just going to be happy you showed up. And that's what an innovator is, right? If you call 100 people, 2.5% of them, let's round up to 3, right? 3 people out of 100 are going to go, oh my God, I'm so happy you called. Let me give you a contract. You're like, really? Yeah, really. It's like, okay, things just align. By the way, I don't mean you're going to get a contract if you're brand new to government contracting. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is for all of us, you really need to focus on the innovators and early adopters and stop spending time with the late majority and laggards. And so the agencies that love 8As are on the left side of the bell curve. And that's who I'm going to show you today, how to find them. One other thing I really wanted to just say today, because I've heard people talk about this off and on. There's 3 ways to make money in the federal government. And when you have some traction, you should be using all 3 ways. If you're brand new, you should use the first way. Those 3 ways are subcontract under small businesses, prime with a federal agency, subcontract under a large business. Those 3 are progressive, meaning do the first one, then the second, then the third, because large primes don't want to work with you really until you have experience working at an agency, so they don't have to teach you everything. And that you've done some teaming, et cetera, with somebody else. That means small businesses. And as you go forward, if you're not making any money, then you sub with smalls. That's totally cool. You can build a $10 million company subcontracting with smalls. As you go forward, and this is the point I want you to remember, so many of us only focus on the priming, right? We're like, I just want to get to the prime point. I get it, but billion dollar firms, they do priming, teaming with larges, and teaming with smalls. They come in and realize that there's money everywhere. Sometimes they'll team with a small as a way to get in the door, right? To agencies they're not at. Large businesses, billion-dollar firms are not necessarily in every agency. And so as you go forward, please remember you want to be doing all 3 of those things: priming, subbing. Okay, that was a little soapbox there, but let's get into why it's important to work with these agencies. And hopefully it's a little self-evident, so I'll go through this pretty fast. But from a factual standpoint, in 2022, 67% of all sole source awards that happened in 2022 happened in the 4th quarter, July, August, and September, right? That's huge. If you can see my screen, you see the numbers here. 16,000 awards roughly were awarded or contracts were awarded in 2022, the whole year, sole source contracts. 10,000 of those 16,000 happened in the 4th quarter. That's massive. You can see this image that I'm showing. It's just another way. And this is pulled from USA Spending this morning. And I'm actually going to go show you again. But look at here. This is September on the far right. That bar is huge. That's that 2.6 billion that I said. This one here is, I can't remember what the number is off the top of my head, but that's like 900 million, right? So in August of last year and in September, it was almost $3 billion in awards as sole source to 8A, right? Sole source 8A direct awards. That's massive. And so again, if you're brand new, I'm not here speaking to you at the moment, sub under a small or a good 8A. But for us 8As, we should be tracking on that, and we should know who are those people, and that's where we're going to go. Really quick, this is just my slide to make sure you understand that the GovCon Chamber exists. We don't do just these trainings. Go to our site. We have all sorts of content. Much of it is ungated. It's right there available for you. Some of it is gated, and some of it, is for sustaining members. But the thing I really wanted to point out is if you haven't downloaded the July version of the Small Business Specialist Directory, go download that now, because as you're talking about trying to knock on the door and see what you can do in the last quarter of the fiscal year, these people, these small business professionals at federal agencies, are the folks you want to talk to. And this directory has over 1,000 names, numbers, and emails. And this is updated every single month, right? We get updates every week from the government and from industry saying, hey, this is updated, this person's new, that kind of thing. So we're constantly keeping that updated, and I really want you to make sure you have it. Okay, so I got about 15 minutes to show you how you can find the agencies that love 8A firms. And while I'm showing you this, keep in mind that you can also see You can also use this for like women-owned small business or HUBZone. And give me 1 second. I just got to check my screen here before I switch over. Usually I'm always looking at my phone to just track the time and the live to make sure we are live. All righty. So I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully you see it. I'm going to act as if this is your first time. If you are experienced with the USA spending, don't worry. You'll learn something, right? And we'll all benefit. But I want to make sure I'm bringing everybody along. So USA spending, it's the best GUI, graphical user interface, of the federal data that has been awarded. So this data we're going to look at is coming from FPDS, which eventually, I guess, all of that's going to be in SAM. But right now, these tools that I use are FPDS and USA spending. And for today, all we need is USA spending. So I'm going to click this button right here, search in here. And now I just need to go down through a few filters. And I want to show you these filters as I go forward, and then we'll come back and look at this. Let me just kind of come in a little bit. First thing I want to show you is when I'm looking for agencies that have awarded, I want to look at the last fiscal year. I'm looking for trending stuff. And so I don't want to see stuff that's right now. I mean, excuse me, I'm looking for historical, not trending. So the first thing I want to do is say FY 2022. That's the period. The next thing I do, and I do 3 filters here. The next one is I don't need all this extra stuff. Like I don't care SBA loans, grants, whatever, any of that. All I want is this. I just want to say, I want to make sure that I'm seeing contracts and not all these other things. And the last thing for the first thing I'm going to show you is I want to say type of set aside. So right here, 8A sole source, right? So when I click on this and I scroll down and I say search, and let me zoom this back in for 1 second. When I come back, I get the results. And don't worry, I'm going to zoom in a second. For this exercise, what I really want to do is quickly jump to the time. And I just want to show you, this is the graph I showed you a minute ago. I went to the time tab and I selected months instead of quarter or years, right? And here I can see how much money is being spent. So there's the 900 million that was spent in August of 2022. There's a chance, there's going to be 900 million spent this August. And then 2.6 billion spent in 2022, in September of 2022. That's huge, right? So that's where you want to be looking at it and why we want to go. But who is doing all this spending? And so here I'm clicking on the categories tab, right? There's great tabs, explore them, you'll learn a lot. But as I come in, and let me zoom in for you. Well, 1 second. So as I come in and you can look at this data, you can see, sorry, I just want to make sure you can see the end. Here you can see, obviously, DOD is just rocking it, right? There was like 8 billion or something direct awarded in 2022. Here you can see DOD did the most of it. And so I can see the agencies, right? I don't have to really walk through the numbers. You can see how drastic this is. This is a big deal, but I'm able to see this at the very high level. It says agencies, but it's actually departments, right? But when you want to see true agencies, you click on sub-agencies, you wait a couple seconds for it to load. And as it comes up, this is where you start having a much better realization of what's being spent, right? So now when I'm looking at it, obviously it's DOD up there, but I can see the Army is more than twice what the Navy and the Air Force are, right? The Army's 2022 spending with 8A direct awards is twice what the Navy and the Air Force is. I'd be looking at the Army, not just because I'm an Army guy, but these numbers tell me that. And then I look at the fourth one. That's CDC. That's HHS, right? And HHS was the second major department in there. But I can see HHS was a lot of departments, and I might have thought NIH, if you know your agencies, was higher, but it's not. CDC is. I'm like, oh, okay, I got to track. CDC is the, if I look at this, it's the only one it looks like from HHS that's on here. Not NIH and not some of these others. I don't know why, and I don't really care at the moment. I'm looking to find the agencies that love 8A small businesses. So as you go forward, you can keep clicking the next 10, but I want to show you a different way of looking at this data. So I chose the entire fiscal year, but I'm curious, do some agencies really just go crazier at the end of the year, from an acquisition standpoint, than they do, than the numbers that show me all year? So if I just come back and say agency for 1 second, I'm going to change that from fiscal year 2022. And instead, I'm going to say, show me August 1st, 2022 to September 30th, 2022. Let me just make sure I got those right. I do. I'm going to hit the filter. And when I do, by the way, you can see up on top my filter, the time period's right there. It's just 2 months in last year. All contracts, 8A sole source. That's all I'm looking for. So it's going out and grabbing that data. Again, it brings it back and it's telling me some information. But if I click on this, now I can, like, if you notice, it's even more with the Army. I mean, way more. Before it was kind of an even 50% for Navy or Air Force, but now the Army is even more than both the Army and the Air Force and the Navy combined. CDC is still up there. If you're at DHS and you're an 8A firm, I wouldn't be looking everywhere. I would be going over to CBP and going, how can I get in the door? Come on, darn AI. How can I get in the door, right? At CBP. I've got a customer, they're 8A and they're in DHA, ironically, right? This is a good bit of news for them because there was 110 million awarded last year. I don't know the number of awards, right? That's a separate level of detail. But something else I can see is that, see right here, NIH for 68 million, they did pop up on the radar. And that's huge, right? And so as you look at this, think about where you're at and where you want to go. And you can use this data. And I just want to show you a couple other things as you look at this. One of the things I was saying, let me come back to fiscal year here. I'm going to change this back to fiscal year. And I just wanted to add in, I was talking about which ones love 8As. If I click on 8A competed, along with 8A sole source, and come back up here, let me just go to time really quick. And I'm breaking this down again by months. But if you look at this, now you start seeing some serious stuff. So the end of the year, it's not just 2 billion where we're talking about this. It's now 4.5 billion that is going through 8A firms, 8A competitive or 8A direct award. That's huge, right? And if you think about, I talked about 8A or the amount of money that went to 8A direct award was 8 billion, but here's set aside 12, right? That means there's 4 billion more that's going in there. So when you look at this and you see this amount of money and you tie it back to the agencies, and let me just get the sub-agency because that's the one I like. When you tie it back to the sub-agencies, you start seeing, and the one thing that's interesting, again, as I come back, and it helps me understand why HHS was up there as the second department, is you notice right here, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services is CMS. CMS is part of HHS. When you look at direct awards and competitive, it looks like CMS tends to be more competitive 8A, where other firms like maybe CDC tend to do a lot more direct awards. These are very valuable pieces of information as you move forward in a particular agency. All right, let me do one last thing just for those of you still on, who are not 8As, but showing you how you can look at some of this other stuff the same way. If I just pull up HUBZone, you know, it's funny, I've never done HUBZone sole source, so I'm going to pull that up really quick just to show you what that looks like. So what that tells me is no one does sole source. Stop trying to get sole source. If you look here, it was $60 million in the entire year in the entire federal government. Out of $600 billion in spending, 60 million of it was direct award. These will be fun if you're a HUBZone to go see why are they direct awarding. If they're direct awarding in your space, that's something that you want to pursue. What I was really trying to find, though, is the HUBZone set aside. Just seeing where that money is spent and which agencies are friendly or love HUBZones, just to kind of pull that in together. So one of the things about being live is it pulls up that data. It takes a little time. Come on, data. I might give up if it takes too long. Oh, there you go. So 1 billion, roughly, it looks like. And that number that number is not right. Like, to me, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with that data, which is interesting. Because the dollars that went to HUBZones was much larger. I'd be really curious if, again, and this goes back to don't just believe the SBA and their marketing material. I'd be really curious if the HUBZone dollars that they talk about were just because HUBZone firms were out there competing, not because people were doing set asides. But according to this data, only $1 billion went set aside HUBZone, which is ironic since I was just talking at the beginning of today's training that I've got the DoD coming and asking to award a single activity task order, SATOC, to an 8A firm, right? So there's a big discrepancy. But again, if you come in here, this is all I want to do is which firms love HUBZones really quick. Army, Air Force. This is really interesting. DHS, you see USCIS is in there. That's a really interesting thing. DHS made a huge commitment to HUBZone firms. But look at this. It's USCIS, CBP. Right here is Coast Guard. That's 3 out of the top 10 are DHS. To me, that tells me DHS really is a much bigger fan of HUBZones than anybody else. Okay, so here's what I want you to remember. Just coming back to the 8A firms in particular, 50% of direct award or sole source contract dollars happened in Q4. 67% of all direct awards to 8A firms happened in the fourth quarter. Don't let this period slide by if you're an 8A small business. Determine your target agency based on what I just showed you. Determine the agency and then determine a path in. I just was helping a small business customer of ours who's an 8A who's pushing into HHS, doing that very thing. How do we build a list of names, numbers, and emails? You do that as well, and you'll be able to get on the radar of the very contracting officers who make these decisions for the federal government. If you don't know this, we do training every single day, so make sure you're coming back tomorrow. Just look at my LinkedIn profile. You'll find the training right there at the top in the featured section. Make sure you just click on attend, let others know. If you're getting value from the training that happens every single day, this is worth thousands of dollars if you continue to attend. At some point when you're ready, consider becoming a sustaining member. It helps every small business across the country, and we really appreciate that. For everybody, just remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.